programming? What
I
kind
mean,
of report?
there are needs really everywhere. I mean, the hope with this program is to be able to give students the opportunity to jump right into the workforce after they receive their certificate, or be able to take this even further and go to a four-year university or whatever they choose. It just gives them a little bit more of an option and more experiences to be able to go into that.
Emma, when is the program launching? Will it be up and ready by the launch of fall semester?
Yes, we're doing a soft launch for the fall semester and hoping to do a full launch for next spring.
Great.
Emma, if I'm not mistaken, I had some conversations with Christy Ransom, the president of the chamber, and one of the pieces with revamping the program was actually what you brought up, Lori. So what they're finding is many of the students who choose to go through this pathway are so encouraged that instead of, just a one-year certificate and going into the workforce, they want to pursue the next level of education, and they can kind of grow with that particular field. So she mentioned that this is geared toward helping that a little bit more. Yeah. Well, thank you, Emma. Are there any other questions from anyone online? All right, thank you. You're welcome to stay, but we understand. And thank you for your presentation on the Synergy. So the Synergy Academy.
Thank you.
So that is one thing we wanted to bring up, that our chamber is, has a program in place that's been working well. It retooled, revamped, and kicking it off. And many other communities have different programs for workforce. And what we wanted to do is to gather each of the members of the committee who can be with us today to talk a little bit about any workforce issues or strategies or workforce shortages or thoughts that you might have on this. I will say that Pat Mutter, member of this committee, did bring a piece. It's on the P drive, and it has to be, there's two files. It has to be the one file. And it was based on a model in Cleveland. And we read it. Again, we'll make this available, but the whole idea is that the recruiting tools that work so well for tourism and visitors can also be helpful in recruiting workforce for economic development. So there was an article on this, and Pat shared that, and we'll make that available to you. But so maybe starting with that example, Pat, would you want to talk a little bit about workforce or a little more on that article? Or
Certainly, thank you, Lucy. Workforce has been actually a topic that all the CVBs have talked about, particularly because it affected so many destinations, whether it was in the area of hospitality for restaurants or hotels or attractions, and, with the fair, with resorts, especially up north. And many of the smaller towns really lost a lot of jobs because of that, and had to let many of their staff go. So at this point, they're all looking at how to bring back people, especially who worked in hotels and the resorts and restaurants, because we know the pay certainly wasn't enough for them to make, a full living and support themselves and or their families. So that is a big topic. And I think we had all gotten together and we talked about it, and the state, and certainly all the states around the country, had figured and talked about if you don't have the people in your community looking for work or wanting to do the work that is available, then really you're looking at people coming in who might, want to move here for various reasons, and have that same access to job opportunities. And this Longwood study that was done too, that I had shared earlier, had said that for destinations that were doing marketing to bring people here as visitors, worked really well if they saw an ad from their marketing destinations and paid a visit, really helped, and they had the percentages that showed more people were apt to either buy second homes, send their kids and grandkids to college, come and retire here and start a business here. So that was all researched. And that then went to another part, I think, with a lot of the bigger CVBs that started working with their chambers and their EDAs and counties, saying if we can all have that same message, because everybody's recruiting, but if everybody's saying different things, there is not a concerted effort to just put it in one area and have that effort made to bring people to your community to work. So that's basically what that is.
So being that the topic is workforce, we have some other people on the committee here who might know a little bit about that, like Mike Dieter. And Mike, do you want to address, again, the idea was to research workforce issues, strategies. You live here in Winona, you lived in other areas of the country. I know I did see something on, I looked up what you mentioned last time on Denver, which was more of a tour. But do you want to talk a little bit about the workforce and what you're seeing?
Absolutely. I mean, we keep our finger on the pulse constantly. That's all we do is recruit. And, the comment I get from a lot of other businesses in the area is that we're just fishing in the same pond, right? The actual people who are looking for work and are sitting on the sidelines is pretty slim. Obviously, there's things we can do, whether it's childcare issues, transportation issues, like there's a lot we can do locally, but it's really a Band-Aid to the problem. That's talking about maybe a couple of hundred people to cover 1,000 open positions. One of our clients right now, they've got a temporary project building supercomputers for the federal government. So they need a huge influx of people and fast. And so when their general manager came to me and said, Mike, we need 150 people and we need them right away. What can we do? I said, well, we don't have another 150 people just sitting around. So we're going to the model that's used with a couple of other offices, usually in agriculture, the cranberry harvest over in, central Wisconsin, stuff like that, peaks and valleys for other companies. And it's a migrant program. So it's bringing people who live in a different area, usually southern Texas, Louisiana, a lot of the other southern states, and they come up for a short period of time. And these are, United States citizens, fully vetted, speak English. They just happen to travel wherever the highest paying jobs are for a time, come up for 3 to 4 months, work as much as they can, work as much overtime as they can, and then they go home to spend time with their families. So, we're pulling the trigger on that, and it's good for a short-term fix, but it really got me thinking. I was actually at a workforce conference down in Dallas a couple of weeks ago and talking to some of the other offices down there. They said, yeah, their average starting pay rate for an entry-level position is $11, $12, $13 an hour. We're doing, $18 to $22 an hour up here is what a lot of our clients are paying. And so, to thinking a lot of their wages are suppressed down there because they're so close to the southern border. And because there is such an influx of illegal immigration, a lot of the companies down there don't have to pay as much to be competitive. So my thought is if we're talking about recruiting for people to move here, if we did it to bigger cities, right? We know the cost savings and the beauty and all the benefits of Winona, but at the end of the day, $18 to $22 an hour or whatever might not sound as competitive to them. When somebody's used to working, $11, $12, $13 an hour, and they can have significant increases. And then it's enough to get them to change. Now, very tight-knit families down there, right? So it's hard to kind of separate people. So you're almost talking about bringing whole people groups up. It might be not just a couple or a family. Now we're talking about bringing grandparents up here and all the cousins, and might look at 20 to 30 people coming with one move. It's really hot down in Texas in the summer. So now is the perfect time when everyone's looking to get out of the 100+ degree heat every single day and say, hey, we're mid 80s up here. This isn't too bad. We have water. This is really good. Greenery instead of just brown is everywhere you can see. So if we're talking about actively recruiting, I think we really have to look at like, where's the target, right? Don't just do a shotgun approach. We have to identify what are the markets that our dollars can have a significant impact and we have a good chance of getting people here.
Mike, I have a question about that. I know that when I was an exchange student in New York State many years ago, they would do that with apple pickers. They brought them all from Texas. I guess my question is, for us to do something here, where would you house all these extra people that you're bringing in?
So for a short term, local hotels are kind of the trick, right? You get 2 people for a room. They know, hey, I'm only doing it for a couple months. It's not that bad. When you think long term, yeah, then it's a challenge. It's a constraint. Do you have an entry-level housing option that somebody can come and either purchase or rent? Yeah, I don't know. There's not a great solution for that. I know other communities out in Rushford, right? They have some agriculture out there, and they have not even, I guess, like a mobile home park. It's more of like a campground with 5th wheels and trailers. Again, when you think short term, that's okay, but eventually people do need some other options for living. Yeah, probably the biggest challenge of getting people to relocate up here is then, yeah, where do they go? Where do they live?
And this is Carlos Espinosa speaking. And I think that definitely gets into some things that we're talking about in the housing subcommittee as well as the land use subcommittee. The ability for people living in owner-occupied housing, if they live in a large house, to be able to rent out a room or to rent out a unit for a short period of time, and to be able to increase the prevalence of that so that you could have those resources, on a seasonal basis, provided by even just a private landowner at a house, and multiple houses throughout the community. So, as opposed to thinking about, everybody going or a great group of people going to a specific place, there could be additional resources that are already in our existing built environment that aren't your traditional hotels or, transitional housing areas that could serve as a resource as well.
And I wonder too, a lot of reports of enrollment is down at all of our higher ed institutions. Maybe there's some room at, available dorms or anything like that, even if it's more of a transitionary period. And then I also think of all the college rentals that maybe as landlords are starting to get a little nervous and say, okay, I've got 5 bedrooms and only 3 of them are signed up for, or about 10 units and only 2 of them are occupied. So definitely an opportunity there. And then even locally, more on the long term, we are starting to see a lot of people from Puerto Rico resettling here. I've had conversations with 5 or 6 of our associates over the last couple of weeks that they moved up here for various reasons. Maybe it was for a migrant type position, and they just fell in love with the area. And it is, all right, now I'm going to get my uncles here. I'm going to get my cousins here. And almost a little community is developing. So I don't know if there's opportunities to get Project Fine involved and other from like a cultural acceptance standpoint to say, hey, there's a community already established here. We get together on Sunday to play soccer in this park, and this is the best place to to shop for our local foods and whatever.
Mike, I'm on the board for Project Fine, and we had a meeting recently, and Ron Hornbaker talked about how Project Fine had really helped them, that Fatima had, I think, access to a number of people who had recently moved to town and were looking for work. And they had a recruitment day, I think, for a lot of the migrants. And he said he probably had 8 that applied, came to that, and the application process was already in order just a week later. So I think that is a great avenue for that. And again, it's I think, within the St. Charles and Lewiston community, there are so many people, I think, still looking for work. So
So I was wondering if others researched or have other ideas. I know, Lori, you are familiar with the Cleveland program that Pat talked about, and I was wondering if Doug and Nathan wanted to share anything about workforce observations, things you're hearing, ideas for improving workers being here in Winona.
Take it away, Doug.
Thanks, Nate. I don't know. I guess my observation at my previous job, it was the same. Everybody knows this. We're short workers, in Southeast Minnesota, but everywhere else. So obviously we talked about how the other subcommittees have talked about housing. Like even if we can get people here, what do we do with them all? And so this is over my head as far as I'm concerned. But this is just a very interesting topic. I don't really have any straight up ideas for this. But I don't know. I mean, on the side too, I flip houses. So that's one thing that I look at when it's like every time I could take a house where it's been dilapidated in this area and turn it into a single family home, it's like one for the good guys. But we have to do that on such a large scale that how can the city do that? So I don't know.
That's a great point, Doug. Doug, can I ask at Island City, which you operate and own, do you find enough workers?
We're looking actually right now. We just posted 2 jobs for some tap room help and for some sales help. We continue to produce more beer and need more help for the volume of beer we're making and the volume of customers we're seeing. And it's a cool, I think, industry to work in, and we're just not seeing a lot of interest. We're offering, I think, competitive wages in the business and in Winona, and we're just the interest is not there. I don't know where the people are, but they're not coming out.
I can jump in too. So we had a maintenance guy leave last week who was, probably making mid 40s. And so we're looking to fill positions. Also, we have problems finding great people. But at the same point, there is so much overlap between this committee and all the committees. Do we really want to create a bunch of jobs for $15 or $20 an hour? I think really the goal is probably we want to create jobs that are paying $80,000 or $100,000 a year. What would happen to the community of Winona that everyone loves all these things about the community if all of a sudden there was 10,000 more people here that were all making $15 an hour? It would totally change the character of the community. So we're all having the right discussions. We're all doing the right thing. I think it's the answer is there's no magic bullet. It's just a slow, steady process, and we're all doing the right things by being here today and sitting at the table and having these discussions. There's a lot of great companies in Winona. There's a lot of commerce around here. We don't have the big boom and bust in Winona that you see in a lot of other parts of the country. A lot of hardworking Midwest values, level-headed people. I know Fastenal, for example, they have recently made a commitment. They bought the old Badger Equipment building. They want to move more of their distribution here because they are having such a hard time hiring people in other places. They find the quality of people in Winona is so much higher than what they can find in these other parts of the country that for $50,000 or $60,000, you can get an awesome employee where in other parts of the country that's just not possible. So I think we're doing the right thing. We're going the right direction, and we all just got to be happy one day at a time, right?
Oh, and Sadie added something to the chat here, and it is something that Sadie is a part of our accessible government committee, and we've been talking about a way to and a better way to welcome folks into town, or just make more concerted effort once people are here to make them feel welcome, valued, and connected to the community. And her question is, have you seen or heard of these kind of efforts making a difference in workforce recruitment, retention, or economic development?
This is Lori. It doesn't sound like my mic is on, it's not white. So one of the things in the Cleveland approach was that whatever you do to get your visitors to come in, you know, a football game, a riverboat tour, those sorts of things, that's the same type of thing you should do when you have folks coming in to get a job here. Make sure they get a trip out on the river, make sure they get to tour the hospital. Pat, I think you actually do that with newcomers to the hospital. You take them through. So we have to think more like they're visitors that we want to stay. And what Mike said is maybe it's a two-armed approach, is we have to somehow have facilities available for those who are seasonal or migratory workers, because they're going to come in sporadically, and who knows if Winona becomes a center for that type of work, that would be great. I don't know what you do in the winter unless you want to shovel snow, but there are things that they could do. But on the other hand, we want a workforce that's going to stay, that's going to buy a house, that's going to buy groceries, that's going to pay taxes, going to send their kids to school, that type of thing. So I think we need to look at both aspects of that. I also think we need to get our colleges involved. I loved your idea of putting them up in the colleges. I was even thinking some of the elementary schools, you know, take a first grade classroom, set up a bunch of cots in there, and they've got a place where you can fix food. And, you know, we have to think outside the box. I think if we're going to do this, we can't just think we're going to build a bunch of houses, Quonset huts like they did in the war, and think that that's going to work, because we want people to come here and be comfortable while they're here. So maybe they'll come back and stay.
Thank you, everybody. Those were great examples of what we can do. And one thing I was speaking with Pat and Lori about when I read the Cleveland piece that they sent was it kind of relates to what Nathan said. There's not a magic bullet, and you have to prepare and do things in order to welcome job seekers to become part of our community. I think the example they used in the article was, okay, it's all right to turn on the faucet, but we don't have a sink. So that's part of the cross reference to other committees as well. There is another piece, and I'm trying to do more research on this, but it is another example of a number of communities working together to try to pilot a program. This one is in Southwest Minnesota, and it's a number of mayors who got together. They put together this plan based on a model from South Dakota, and basically it's a reimbursement of tuition program. Now, this is a very expensive program, which is the reason why this Southwest Minnesota Council of Mayors applied for a large grant for this pilot project. It was in the legislature. I don't believe it was funded, but it's kind of, you know, one of those unique ideas that a region came up with. And I do think many of our local companies are implementing tuition reimbursement programs quite generously. So that was just another piece. And then Carlos, does anyone have anything else on that or questions?
Do they still have this for our military personnel when they are finished with their tours? You know, they used to have a go back to college fund.
They still do,
I mean,
in some form,
would some of that fill right in with this?
right?
So we need to advertise.
Right. And, you know, in Southwest Minnesota, I know we do see some leakage of people, but in Southwest Minnesota, the problem is much worse than it is here.
Just one more thing before we move on is, I think all of these things are great, but what's our study? What are our target areas? What kind of educational opportunities do we want to offer people so they can filled jobs that we have open here in Winona. I mean, if we don't have jobs open in ag diesel, why should we send somebody to learn more about it? And I think that's how we should get some of our larger manufacturers in on this, have them help us look at the different types of opportunities that they feel at our colleges, our major employers, the school systems, the hospital.
And that's
Those
what
are
I think the
folks.
chamber did when when they developed the certificate program, the 1-year program that Emma was speaking of. I think they met with a number of businesses to find the top areas where they need, and it's just a start, but it's somewhere to start. But I think what I'm hearing from you, Lori, is a more detailed survey. Maybe our Career Force Center could help us conduct a more thorough survey of workers that are needing training that's needed and what the demand is.
And I think that does kind of lead us into kind of the next thing that we're looking to talk a little bit about, which are some emerging concepts or themes. And one of those emerging themes being kind of a unified discussion point, a unified point of marketing. And Lucy has done a great job in putting together some emerging concepts and organizing them into boxes or into different buckets. And this is just a draft, so we'll put it up on the screen here. But what we'd like to do is take a look at this, and maybe Lucy, if you could talk a little bit about some of the boxes that you have kind of put things into. And I see this as a very valuable tool for us to talk about at this meeting and help to use this document as a way to start crafting those goals and objectives in future meetings. So I'll bring that up here and put it on the screen if Lucy, you want to describe a little bit about it.
Okay, this was literally put together about 2 hours ago, quite quickly. I don't think I ran spell check, but we can go with it anyway. So I was going back and reading our notes and going back to the beginning of the meetings that we have. And again, we're trying to find some common themes that we're hearing through each of our meetings. What that helps us do then is to eventually get to goals and objectives. So in a comprehensive plan, there's a number of sections, and each section has quite a bit of data. For example, our workforce data, our economic development data, and things like that. And it's followed by a section on goals and objectives, which is what our subcommittees are putting together. So what I was trying to do is, come up with these boxes. So at one of our first meetings, we heard that through the engagement process, that was done by Engage Winona. Some of the things that we heard, ironically, or not ironically, but we were hearing the same things during our meetings that we've had over the past 4, including this meeting, that we're hearing about human capital or workforce. We're hearing about housing. We've heard a lot at our previous meetings about local small business startup support and industry and diversity. So that's what we heard from the people of Winona in the 2,000 comments that were put together by Marcia. And then what I did is I tried to me, when I read the notes from all the meetings, I'm really hearing marketing, one front, one voice, examples like Eau Claire, making sure that we do this with images instead of words. And then what we could do, if you recall, we did a strength and weakness piece. Maybe these strengths are emphasized within that tool. Now, this is getting specific. Our goals have to be bigger and more general, but I'm just trying to get together themes that we heard. So on the left box, business and entrepreneurship. Now here again, we got down to a very detailed level. The comp plan's a little higher level, but still these are great examples. We heard, what about food? What about food trucks? Even including an expanded farmers market type idea and having a marketplace, a community commercial kitchen, I should add to that was brought up. we've also heard numerous times about having a place for resources in that entrepreneurs and business people maybe have their specialty in the area of their business, but not necessarily in how to get a tax ID number and, you know, how do I fill out a quarterly sales tax report? So those are things that I think we've been hearing. And then I know that there was at the last meeting, the thought brought up of identifying from businesses what some of our barriers are. So on the lower left, I put things outside our committee, but that we're hearing from other groups like the housing, like utilizing our riverfront better. And actually, I have to move that third bullet somewhere else. I just threw it in there. But the idea we heard from the committee was to make sure that through all of our process, we're keeping in mind those overarching themes of equity, technology, and sustainability. Okay, and then I just threw that thing in the lower right. But I'm gathering that, you know, people like safe, happy places with amenities galore. So this is kind of what our next goal would be, is to come up with emerging concepts and themes, and this will be out there. I may have missed some things. You know, sometimes we're handling the meeting and there's things that we don't hear. If we could add to this list from based on our past meetings to come up with some of those emerging themes, that would be helpful for our next meeting. And then Carlos, do you want to talk a little bit about the templates and things you're working on?
Sure. So for all of the subcommittees, what we'll be putting together is a goals and objectives template. And the idea is to have that on one piece of paper. And then on the other piece of paper, you'd have something like this, that is a one-page summary of kind of the high-level ideas and general consensus thoughts that each committee has had, and using this document to start filling in the goals and objectives for each section. So what we'd like to do is try and flesh out this document a little bit more, and then at subsequent meetings, look at using this document to start getting those goals and objectives down on paper. So in addition to what you see here, we'll be adding the comments that we had today in terms of workforce. So that'll be another bucket or another box in here. But what we'd be looking for the committee for over the next probably about 10 minutes here is just any thoughts on what you see in front of you, things that could be changed, things that could be added to it. Doesn't have to all happen now. You could also provide us with your thoughts at the next meeting, or take it home with you. But we would ask for those that are in attendance today, if you have any thoughts on this, and if you have any additions that you'd like to see.
Or even, are there things up here that aren't correct that you don't think were emphasized, that aren't in there properly? Or again, add more. So anything you can provide would be helpful.
I like your lower right-hand box, because I think that's what's going to get people to stay here. And happiness is something you want, and affordability. Yeah, everybody was happy. But when I was looking at the labor force, I was thinking, what's going to get people to stay here? And I thought, they want to know that it's safe. They want to be able to find housing. They want to know that the schools are good if they come in with their kids. They get sick, they want to know there are hospitals or clinics that'll take care of them, that there's good transportation, that there's opportunities for continuing education, that we've got lots of wonderful natural resources. And I just added this because Mike mentioned it and I forgot, but that was great childcare. That's a biggie these days. And then for activities, they want both indoor and outdoor activities. So indoor, we've got arts, performances, culture, history, and for outdoor, let's focus on 4-season type of activities and emphasize the river. I think so often we forget that we live on this beautiful river. We're so used to seeing it flow by. We forget how people come here and they're just in awe of this magnificent waterway.
Lori, I think you're spot on when we think about retention, right? And that's our goal anytime if we're working with a client of, yeah, we can get people in the door, but if we're not doing something to keep them here. And when I think what's probably our biggest draw of new people coming to town, number one is definitely our universities and colleges, right? We have a constant flow of new faces. And so maybe to do a study and to look in, like, what is our current retention rate of students after they're graduating, or even, while they're in school? How many are actually staying here and how many are leaving just because they don't know about, again, the good opportunities here, whether it is housing, employment. Sometimes it's safe to stay in your little campus bubble and it's hard to get out. So, maybe even working with Visit Winona to say, be a tourist in your own town. These are the different types of restaurants that maybe you're not used to going to, or going to the Minnesota Marine Art Museum. It's not just a stuffy old person's place. It's the amazing things for our community, and really focusing there first. And then secondly, working with tourism, right? And planting that seed early. If they are just cruising through for a weekend, or they are visiting their students who are already going to St. Mary's or WSU, how can we get the hooks in them to say, all right, this is a good place to live?
Mike, you are a great example of why you came to town and how you found out about Winona. Could you tell the group about that? Because I love telling your story, but you tell it so much better.
Kudos to Pat and her team for putting together some amazing videos. And so I think that's why I speak so fondly of the Visit Winona videos and that whole Think Eau Claire style. But, we were just in a place in our lives in Colorado where we already knew we wanted to go somewhere. It was getting too busy, too expensive, too much crime, and all the reasons, the exact opposite of what Winona is. And just kind of putting some feelers out there. And we stumbled upon, I think I had a cousin who mentioned, well, hey, maybe one of the river towns, if I could move anywhere else, I'd move, Stillwater, Red Wing, Winona. And we just Googled Winona, and one of the first pages that came up was this video. And we watched the video, and we're just kind of hitting each other, my wife and I, and maybe 5 minutes later, we went to the next video and watched the next video and watched the next video. Within an hour, we were looking at plane tickets and booked a flight out here. Didn't know a soul in town, and flew in, and this was in the middle of February. And we came to town, came in on a Saturday morning, and, just did the stuff that the videos tried to say, right? Go to Mangoes. So we went just downtown. We went to Heart's Desire and struck up a conversation with a shopkeeper, and she ended up giving my wife a hug and said, oh, for goodness, just do it, just move here. And just the more time that we spent in meeting the amazing people, seeing the architecture, even the frozen river at that point, we knew by the time we were boarding our flight on the way back, we knew we're quitting our jobs, we're selling our house, and we're moving here. And it was the best decision we ever made.
A video of you. Actually, we've talked to Mike, and in fact, Kate Carlson from Visit Winona, and she had worked, and checked with a lot of other communities. And that was when I think the chamber was also looking at doing a relocation packet. So Kate has a lot of information about starting a program like that. So this is certainly something we want to work with the chamber on, because I think at that point, the chamber was interested in doing something that was really, I think, for higher level cabinet or, higher end positions. So we, at that point, then started tracking visitors who came into the visitor center as to what they are in town for. So we do have that, and we can share that with the community because we track it every month. If they are coming in for relocation, where they're coming from and what they're coming to do in town, if they're going to work and where. A little sparse for a lot of details, but at least that started. So we have a couple years worth of information on that. I think one of the other things when we talk about recruitment, we don't talk enough about retention. And I know working with Winona Health, that was one of the things as I did tours for providers that we had wanted to bring to town. And a lot of them had said it's really nice, to have that interest. But what happens when they get here and after a year, they want to leave because there isn't that connection. Winona is a little difficult to make connections sometimes, although I really boast about how engaged the community is and how caring. But I think if you find the right group, it's easy to get along and it's a great community. But even like within the hospital to have, you know, whether it's the doctors or the staff or the nurses, have a group there that sort of really shadow you, not just shadow you, but again, provide the resources and be the ones that go out and this is where you go to find this or do that. And that is something I think this community needs is, you know, whether it's in a manufacturing company, within that company to say, we brought you here, we want you to stay. And a lot of people don't find that community. And that's one of the reasons we hear of why people leave.
So
Thank
Pat,
you
to your
for the-
point, oh, sorry. To
No,
your
go
point,
ahead,
Pat,
Mike.
To provide opportunities for people to get plugged in, I think it's huge, right? Because you can move here and even how beautiful everything is, if you're not feeling that connectedness to it. You know, when I think of, you know, my wife getting plugged in with different mom groups, and a lot of that was through Facebook, right? But to now have other moms with kids the same age and then setting up play dates and making friends was huge. You know, looking at how important our church was for us when we first came to town and meeting a lot of young families that way. And so, yeah, it can't just be the employers who are doing it. That's a huge part, even of a new person right on their first day. Hey, inviting someone to go sit at the same lunch table as them, but what other opportunities are there to get plugged in for the community, right? Doug, maybe Island City hosts a new to town event once a month where anybody who's moved to town comes down, grabs a pint and gets to know each other. Or do you have community liaisons? You find your people who maybe they were transplant themselves, but it's, you know, you pair them up with a new person has moved, and that's working with all the realtors. Anybody who's moved to town, they have a list of, hey, here's the next person on the list. This is a couple that's, or a family that's going to kind of be arm in arm with you, show you the scenery, introduce you to other people, help you with employment, whatever it is.
Great comments. I do know, and Emma, I know you're more recent here at the chamber, but there was an effort. It didn't go to the next level because, of course, it requires funding to do these many things. But what was it called? Kind of the Concierge Program, or now it was targeted to a little bit different audience. You know, more the professionals and things like that. But it was the same idea about having someone show you the way, you know, so to speak, and whether that's, you know, there's different ways to do it for different groups, but.
I was
Yeah,
thinking
so-
about,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead, Emma.
At MACE, we went to a MACE conference back in April, and there was a representative from Eau Claire who told us about their concierge program, and they have a representative from their chamber take new families, new professionals, new college students around town and show them different industries and different activities, things to do downtown, different housing communities, everything like that. And we are working on a talent attraction website through the chamber. It's going to be about a year-long process before we can get that actually going. If you look up Think Eau Claire, it is similar to that kind of video that we want to do, but attracting people to the different housing communities and downtown life, recreational programs, school systems, things like that, to not only get people here, but keep them here. So we will be in the process of that soon.
I was just thinking about what Nathan said earlier about, you know, not just the right out of high school workforce, but also get that middle class back across the United States. I don't know if the opportunity for moving up in a company is as great here as it is getting your meat and potato workforce to stay here after high school and stay and raise their family. That would be something to look at, the retention for them, because if they're moving up, they may have to leave the company if they don't have the opportunity within each of their companies to do so.
Are there any other comments or questions related to this overall document? I think definitely one thing we'll be putting on there in addition to workforce in our earlier discussion in this meeting is retention, and adding that as another bucket or box to focus on and help to something for us to think about when determining goals and objectives. We do have just a few more minutes here before we adjourn, though. I did want to try and schedule our next meeting. So we are on here on Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Seems to work pretty good for most people. So if we were a couple of weeks out, we do have another subcommittee occurring on the 14th at the same time.
Yeah,
So what we could look at doing is either doing it on a Tuesday at 4 o'clock. That would be Tuesday, July 12th at 4 o'clock. Or else taking it out to 3 weeks, and that would be the 21st at 4 o'clock. I guess so the 12th or the 21st. Any preference on those two?
12th would work better for me. There's a Chamber of Commerce board meeting that day, so I'm not sure if that affects anybody else. There's also a ORC golf tournament that day, so there might be other committee members tied up. But
which day, Mike?
the 14th, or sorry, the 21st is the day that has all of the extra things on it. So personally, for me, the 12th works better, but I'm flexible.
How does the 12th look to others? Okay,
The 12th of July, which is a Tuesday at 4 p.m. would work. And so we'll send out a meeting reminder on that. And then again, if you can kind of be thinking and going through information from all our meetings, again, we'll put the meeting notes and everything out there on the webpage. And if you can all start to think about buckets and kind of coming up with those common themes, that would be helpful. And then we'll start to go through some different formats and platforms that Carlos is creating and Luke. So.
Is partnerships. And I'm not sure which of your boxes under which one of those, it's probably with marketing.
That did come up at quite a few meetings, and that's why I'm glad that we looked at my very sketchy initial 2-hour thing here, but because we heard that a lot, Lori, already, partnerships with the colleges, partnerships in the marketing area. You know, I know Emma is talking about what the chamber might do, but we're hearing, hey, let's all work together so that we have the one voice, one piece, and similar to Eau Claire. So kind of bringing in the colleges, but definitely partnerships is another bucket. Okay.
and so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and update this document here. And when we send out our reminder for our next meeting here, we'll include this document. So it's kind of a reminder to at the next meeting that we'll be discussing this and starting with those goals and objectives. So thank you, everybody, for attending today. Appreciate the conversation. It was wonderful. And we will see you on July 12th at 4 o'clock.
Perfect. Thank you.